So, if you just made it through my little slideshow, my story starts when we first found out that I was pregnant. I was so excited, and I thought because my first pregnancy was so easy that this one was going to be a breeze too. I felt great when I was pregnant with my first son, Rowan. However, at 6 weeks, my husband made me breakfast in the morning and he made scrambled eggs and I threw that up and we thought, oh, here we go, like just a little bit of morning sickness. This is like part of the like here we go, it's pregnant time. Um, and then I started throwing up at work a little bit. And I was like, oh, it'll be okay. At 8 weeks pregnant, I started throwing up all the time. And I started to get just a little bit of anxiety. I'd be sitting at my job and all of a sudden I'd feel my heartbeat kind of fast and I'm like, oh, that's weird. But I didn't really think a lot of it because I had been off my meds for so long that I just thought this is, just like a little rush of hormones or something. So then I was at work one day and my heart started beating really, really fast. And I thought, gosh, this doesn't feel good. So they took my pulse and it was like 204 beats a minute. And I thought, oh, great, I'm back in SVT again. And my doctor, who was working at the hospital at the time, who was also my OB doctor, took me downstairs and gave me the day off, put me on a Holter monitor, and said, you're getting a little bit dehydrated um, from your pregnancy, and maybe that's probably just why you went into SVT. I have a history of SVT or supraventricular. That's not what it's called. It's called supraventricular tachycardia. I have an extra electrical node in my heart, which sometimes the electrical conduction system that's in your heart, there should be 5 nodes. I have 6. And sometimes the 2 nodes here, oops, over here, where my heart actually is, get stuck and they start to loop around each other, so my heart can beat at like 200 beats a minute. But it happens so rarely that I don't qualify for surgery, for the cauterization surgery. So, anywho, ski. Um, so what really got crazy is after that little episode, I was like, okay, they gave me some IV fluids, told me to take it easy. Well, the next week I was 9 weeks pregnant, and I woke up one morning and I was in a panic, full-blown panic attack. And if you had a panic attack, you just feel like your heart is beating out of your chest. You can't keep uh, you can't keep yourself calm. You just are like, you're out of control. And um, I just I felt crazy. I felt nuts. And my son woke up and I was like, you need to get your stuff on right away. I was taking my son to school. I'd wait till like 8 o'clock and take him to school. However, I started to take him to daycare starting on this day. I was like, Rowan, you need to get dressed. I need to take you to daycare at 6:30. And then I paced around my house crazily until 8 o'clock, called my doctor, got in, and told him that I was being crazy. They started me on Zoloft, 50 milligrams, because I had been on it before. Um, Xanax, if I really needed it, but since I was pregnant, they didn't really want me to take a lot of it. B12 and Unisom for my pregnancy sickness, and they thought, oh, that'd be okay. So I started to take all that. Then I still felt anxious, groggy, with the Unisom and Xanax. I'd take naps, but I would wake up and I'd be in a complete panic. I mean, I would just freak out. And so I hated taking any naps, but I would get so groggy from the Xanax and Unisom. But I was so panicky all the time. This eyebrow is way bigger than this one, and it's lower. I'm sorry, everyone. I'm really sorry about that. Anywho, I started to take Xanax at 6, 12, 6, and midnight. Um, I started to get more anxious, more depressed. My husband would get ready to leave in the morning for work at like, he had to go to work at like 5 something in the morning. I would just burst into tears as soon as he was getting ready to leave. I would bawl like a crazy person. I mean, if this is happening to you, I don't want you to think that you're crazy, but like for me, I had everything together, and then all of a sudden, my hair is crazy. All of a sudden, I just felt I didn't have anything under control. Um, and then I started to take my son to daycare as soon as I could. I would wake him up at 6 to make sure that I could take him to daycare at 6:30 because I was awake at 5:30 a.m. pacing around, being crazy. I just could not calm down. I couldn't calm down. And I felt out of control. So I would wake up at like 5:30. Joey would leave. I would bawl while he left. I would wake Rowan up at 6 o'clock, get him ready, and take him immediately to daycare. I was terrified that I couldn't take care of him. I was worried that what if I passed out and died or something? I just, total irrational thinking. And now I think back and I think, how could I avoid my little sweetheart? My little baby, my boy, I mean, he was like, how old was he? 5 or 6 at the time. But I was terrified to have him in the house with me because I thought, what if something happens to me? And then I thought, okay, this is crazy. I went to the doctor. They increased my Zoloft to 100 milligrams and started me on Zofran. I got to about 12 weeks, and they were like, "Oh, you should be reaching the end of your sickness." It was not the case. It got worse. At 12 weeks, I wasn't any better. I would drop my son off at daycare at 6:30, and I was so anxious, I couldn't go back to my house alone. So I would drive around for 2.5 hours every day, until 9 o'clock. I would get home a little bit before 9, and then I would watch Live with Kelly because that seemed to calm me down. Um, and and I would wait for my husband to call me on breaks, and I would just pace around the house. And I hated that house when I was pregnant. I hated it. It was this pretty old house, and we were renting it like at the time, and it was all charactery, and it was just kind of cool and kitschy. But for some reason, when I was pregnant with McCoy, I was terrified to be alone in the house. I hated the house. I didn't like anything about it. I wanted to, I just couldn't be there alone. I hated to be in that house. It gets crazier, trust me. So, yes, it gets crazier. So at about 14 weeks, I was out on one of my 2.5 hour drives in the morning, because I couldn't stay home alone. And I was so anxious, I crashed into another car. I ran a stop sign. And then I thought, this is effing crazy. I could have hurt somebody. No one got hurt, thankfully. But then they checked my blood sugar, and it was like 60 or something. And come to find out that I had now gestational diabetes. My blood sugar was going to go up and down for the rest of my pregnancy. So that was great. I got admitted to the hospital that day for dehydration and new diagnosis gestational diabetes, and I had lost 10 pounds from throwing up so much. I was having vomiting and diarrhea. I was in the hospital, and my husband was with me for a little bit, but then he had to leave to go back to work. And I paced around my hospital room. I waited for my husband to get there. I couldn't sit still. I would rock. I would constantly, I mean, I was like a caged animal. It was nuts. And I didn't want anybody to know about it because I didn't want anybody to know how crazy I was because I thought, oh my God, they're going to take my child away from me because Rowan, my first son, is with a different father. And we were in the middle of arranging custody, and I wanted full custody of my son. And I thought, oh my God, if they think I'm crazy, they're not going to let me have my child. And then I started to think, maybe he's not good with me. Maybe he should go with his dad. And if you know him, it's not a good idea. So I hid it from my friends, from my family. I just would say, you know, I, I paced around because I'm trying to burn off those pregnancy calories. But I think everybody knew. I mean, I was always crying. I was crazy. And and finally I kind of told a little bit to my friend Katie, who was so amazing and was there for me 100%. And I just had to tell somebody other than my husband how bad it was. I got out of the hospital and I started to stay at my mother-in-law's house for about a week. And she was amazing too. I kind of told her about how bad it was, but I didn't tell her about all my crazy thoughts about Rowan. And I literally was in her bed every day. She runs an in-home daycare. I was in her bed every day, in and out of consciousness, from my Xanax and Unisom and being tired from throwing up so much. And then I was done on my leave and I had to go back to work. And it was terrible. They increased my Zoloft to 150 milligrams, and they added Phenergan gel and Reglan. Well, I was at work and and I was walking down the hallway and all of a sudden my face started to twitch and it was like this. It looked exactly like this. And someone's like, "What are you doing with your face?" And I called my doctor, and it turns out that my Reglan and my SSRI, my Zoloft, were interacting with each other, and I was getting tardive dyskinesia, or like facial twitching. So that was great, and so I had to stop the Reglan, and it did kind of help with my anxiety. Or I mean, not my anxiety. Sorry, it did kind of help with my sickness, but it made my hands like I was always having to do something with my hands, and obviously my face was twitching. So that wasn't good. The Phenergan gel just made me tired, and I couldn't take the Phenergan or the Xanax at work, so it was just Zoloft and Zofran at work, and I was crazy. They started to give me IV fluids every 3 days, which helped with the Hyperemesis Gravidarum. Um, and I started to throw up. But I was still throwing up. Um, my doctor let me cut down my 12-hour shifts to an 8-hour shift. I'm a nurse, I was working at the time. I was an RN on a med surg floor, and if you know what med surg is, you have to be like on your game all the time. You need to be like in the zone, taking care of patients. They could be having a heart attack, whatever. So I needed to like be focused, and I couldn't do that for 12 hours. So I worked 8-hour shifts. I started to get so hot all the time. I had a fan on me. I turned the air down to 66 degrees. Um, and I don't know how I cried all the time. I would pace around. I just felt like I don't even want to be here. And if it wasn't for Holly and Patty and Jen and Shelby and Julie T, you know who you are, not the other Julie T and Bobby, I would not have been able to get to this pregnancy. You girls were amazing. I encourage you, if you're having any of these problems, to tell somebody that you trust at work, and they can help you through it. These girls were my support system at work. If I just needed to cry to somebody, they would give me a hug or say, "It's going to be fine. It's going to be okay." And a lot of times it was. I mean, I felt out of control. And Chris, you know who you are. Girl Chris, not boy Chris, but girl Chris. You are amazing too. Oh, and Darcy, love you too. And while I hated work, home was getting just as bad. Instead of driving around in the mornings, I was like, okay, I'm wasting gas money. So I would get so anxious that even driving started to bug me. So I would drop my son off at 6:30, and then I would come home, and then I would walk from, um, literally, I would walk from like 7 a.m. until 11 a.m. I would walk for 4 hours. I would come home, I would eat, and then I would go walk again for 4 hours with my poor little dog, sometimes. She's a little rat terrier. I would walk everywhere, just for miles and miles and miles. And I was so tired and dehydrated, and I had no food in my system because I couldn't eat, that I started to lose even more weight. I lost 30 pounds because I just wanted to walk everywhere. And even if it rained, I put an umbrella up and I walked. I didn't want to be home alone. I would rather walk miles and miles and miles than be in my house alone. And I know it's crazy. That is crazy. But at the time, that's all I could do to get by. And I didn't want to tell anybody because I felt like people were going to judge me. And if you're watching this and you're thinking, you are crazy, yeah, maybe I was, but I needed somebody to help me or to understand me. I mean, I wasn't like suicidal or anything like that, but I just felt out of control. I just was crawling under my skin inside, and I felt so guilty that this little baby who was going to end up being, oh my God, I am not going to cry right now. I felt so guilty that this little baby that is now like one of the loves of my life, I like loathed being pregnant, and I had no connection to him whatsoever while he was in my stomach. I just took it as this is an illness and it has to come to an end at some point. When my husband would get home, or after at 3 o'clock, I would go pick my son up and from school, and then we would come home and we would play with the dogs outside. And I did not want to go inside, even when I had my son home. We would play outside with the dogs. I just didn't want to go inside. I couldn't even go inside until supper happened, and at supper, I would sit at the table and start crying. And the only thing I could kind of eat was like potatoes and steak. That's it, ish. And I still kind of barfed that up. I just didn't want to be inside, and I could only calm down around like 7 when we finally sat on the couch at the end of the night. Um, and it was winding down, and I would take my son up and I would give him a bath, and I would, in between, helping him wash off, I would lay a blanket on the bathroom floor, and I would just lay on the floor and read him stories, or we would play this game where he would take the bath crayons and draw on the bath wall, and then I would have to guess what he drew. And I mean, that's all I could do. And I just, to this day, I feel really guilty that he had to go through that. And I feel like I wasn't a very good parent to him. I mean, I think he's okay today. If you've seen him in any of my other videos, he's pretty imaginative. But I feel guilty that I feel like he missed out on a lot of mothering when I was pregnant with my second son, McCoy. God. Um, so work, um, then it got cold and I couldn't walk anymore. So I started to stay at my mother-in-law's house. I would do whatever I could around the house. I would try to keep myself busy doing cleaning and laundry, but then I get so tired and I just couldn't stand to be in the house anymore. So I'd go to my mother-in-law's house and just sit on her bed from like noon until 3. And then I could pick my son up. And even then I could barely get home. I didn't want to go home by myself or be alone with Rowan. Then we found that there was black mold in our bathroom at our house. So then we had to start looking for a different house. That started to stress me out. I had to go to court to get custody of my son. I did get custody of Rowan, full custody, but that was stressing me out. I mean, I just, between, taking care of myself and all those stressors, it was just a nightmare. And then finally, around Christmas time, it started to get a little bit better. I would take up my time um, with wrapping presents and getting ready for Christmas. But after Christmas was over, the anxiety was just still bad. I was still throwing up. God, get out of here. You can check out any of my other videos to find out about the Hyperemesis Gravidarum. But um, my job, I just hated it. I couldn't be there anymore. As soon as I stepped foot in that place, I was anxious, I was nauseous, and my boss was horrible to me. She was horrible. She pulled me into her office and said, people don't need to feel sorry for you, okay? So you can just stop crying. You know what? I would love to stop crying. Do you think I like to cry? No, I can't help it. You know, she would be like, we all get it. You're pregnant, but everybody else has been pregnant and they don't have these issues. No shit. No shit they don't have these issues, okay? Like, I had hyperemesis gravidarum. I had anxiety. Like, what do you want me to do? So I went and talked to my HR person, and turns out that my boss was in the wrong, and my HR person talked to my boss. So to this day, I really can't say that I will ever forgive her. I mean, maybe, like, before I die, maybe, but she was horrible to me. My boss was horrible. Horrible. Um, and if your boss is horrible to you, you don't have to take that. You talk to somebody in HR, you talk to somebody in um, law, like a lawyer, anybody. You know, you don't have to put up with that when you're pregnant. You should be taking care of you and your baby. Anywho, finally, the baby was born. And he was born 2 weeks early. We were going to close on a house 2 weeks after he was born, but he came early. So my husband had to move all of our stuff out of our house into our new house the day after my son was born because he because our landlord was kicking us out after we told him that we were leaving. He's like, well, then just get out. So I was alone at the hospital with my baby. And when McCoy came out, I just looked at him and I just didn't feel any connection to him at all. He just seemed like something, just, I don't know. It wasn't like as soon as Rowan was born where I was like, that's my baby. I just didn't feel that with McCoy. And like, to this day, I feel guilty about it. But Joey left and I laid there with McCoy all day and I started to bond with him a little bit. And then at about 5 o'clock, a nurse came in and said, you know, his monitor's going off. His heart is beating fast or something. So they took him into the respirator and realized that his oxygen was low. They did a chest x-ray and he had pneumonia. He had aspirated meconium. He had pneumonia. We got life flighted to Blank's Children's Hospital in Des Moines. And the nurses there were amazing, amazing in the NICU. I stayed there with McCoy, and I just remember that car ride being the scariest car ride in the world. And immediately when I was in the car, I thought, oh my God, what if something happens to this baby? And I didn't even feel a connection to him. And so we got to the NICU, and I just wanted to make sure that he was okay. And it was like, in an instant, as soon as I saw him, I was like, that's my baby. That is my little baby. And I held his hand, and my husband held his hand. We held his hand all night and prayed that he would get better. And he did. After 6 days in the NICU, we got to go home. But in those 6 days, my husband had to go home to take care of Rowan, and he had to go back to work. And I thought, oh my God, how am I going to get through this? How am I going to stay here by myself? I'm going to get anxious. I'm going to have a panic attack. I need somebody to calm me down. Da, 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 da. Um, but I made it. And I brought my laptop, you know, but I still was that person where I thought, I don't even know what to do. I've been pregnant and anxious and depressed for so long. I can't even think about what I want to do. I don't even know what my interests are. What do I like to do? What do I want to do? And I thought, will I ever get better? Can it ever go back to how it was? And my husband always said, yes, it will. So we got home and I missed my other son so much, and it was the greatest feeling in the world to be able to go home with him. And I got home with McCoy, and the next day Joey had to go to work. I was going to be at home alone with my baby. And I wanted to go to my mother-in-law's house so bad and just lay in her bed and have her tell me that everything was going to be okay. But I thought, this baby deserves more than that. I have to try somehow to get better. So we started a little routine. We'd wake up, McCoy would be in my bed, and we would watch The Nanny. Then we would watch Dog the Bounty Hunter, and then we would watch Animal Cops Houston. And each day started to get a little bit better. I really liked staying home with him. Then I had to go back to work on med surg. Well, it was horrifying. They tried to switch my medications after I was done being pregnant to Lexapro. It worked for a little while, but not really. I would still cry. Like, I still didn't even want to be in my new house on days off. I I just felt anxious when I was by myself. Um, Tried Cymbalta. I just didn't really feel any different with that, except I felt a little bit jittery, and I felt like I was always, I felt I couldn't sleep at night. I'm sorry. I felt like I had insomnia. And then I they tried Paxil on me, and when I had the Paxil, I had taken it for about 4 days, and I woke up and I looked at Joey and I said, I don't think I want to live anymore. And I know that's a crazy thought to have, but I don't think I want to live anymore, and I think it's the Paxil. And then Joey was like, yeah, we should tell somebody about that. So while I was working on third floor, I had gone in for a job interview to work in the clinic downstairs, and I got a job just as needed. Well, I started working the clinic downstairs, and that day that I was on the Paxil that I thought, oh my God, I don't want to live anymore, I went to go to work for a doctor, a female doctor, Dr. Flores. Mwah, love you. Um, and she said, you seem kind of down, and I said, yeah, I don't think everything's all right. And so she pulled me into her office and said, what's going on? And I kind of told her a little bit of what was happening, and I just burst into tears. And she said, we need to call the psychiatrist. And I said, please don't put me on the fourth floor. You know, I was terrified that she's going to put me, like, lock me away in an institution because I said I don't want to live anymore. But I said, it's a feeling, and I know it's irrational, and I don't want to have that feeling, but it's there. So, God, like, let me just tell you, this side of my face I like. This side of my face I don't like. My face is very crooked, and I'm very sorry. Anywho, so Dr. Flores called our psychiatrist. I talked to him a little bit on the phone, and he said, you are having rebound anxiety from your Xanax. When I would take the Xanax at 6, 12, 6, and 12, it would wear off before then, and then I would get rebound anxiety. So he switched me to Effexor and Klonopin. Effexor, like, eventually I was like on 300 milligrams, and Klonopin a milligram 3 times a day to help break the cycle and to just calm things down. And it worked. And if it hadn't been for those two, I don't know what I would have done. But it was like, and then I said, I can't go back to work on third floor, Dr. Flores. I'm so anxious. And she said, well, we'll give you 2 weeks off. So she called my boss, who wasn't happy about it, and said, we're going to give you 2 weeks off. We're going to have her not work there for 2 weeks. And in those 2 weeks' time, a job opening came open in the clinic. And I interviewed for it, and I was just kind of open with my problem, and somehow they let me have the job. And it was the best feeling in the world to be able to call my old job and say, um, yeah, I am not going to work there anymore. And I asked them if they wanted me to finish out my 2 week or 4 week notice, and they were like, no. And I was like, okay, peace out, deuces. So now I love my job. My Xanax, or I don't take Xanax, sorry. My Klonopin and um, Effexor dose are way lower. I would like to try to get off them. That's why I'm trying Yoli right now. But if I can't ever get off them, then I just can't get off them. It's worth it to me to have to take something to not have those feelings again. I owe it to my son and my other son and my husband and everyone around me. Like, I know some people just like to hate on any like antidepressant or anything, and they think, it's terrible for you, but honest to God, I would not have been able to get through it without it and the wonderful doctors and friends. I mean, I started to write again. I started to get my courage back. I started to not have social anxiety. I couldn't go anywhere before when I was pregnant. I got the courage to be in the community theater musical Annie as Miss Hannigan. There's some links, or if you look at my page, there's some rehearsal videos if you care to. I mean, I don't care. But it was just a lot of fun. I started to get into acting and writing again and fashion and everything that I loved before. It was like I had my personality back. And now I love to take naps. I love my days off. I have a day off today actually, so I'm doing these YouTube videos. Had a great day so far. And I love my job. And I still have a friend at my job now where every once in a while I get a little bit anxious because, sometimes it happens. It's not like, oh, yay, I'm cured. But I can just say, I'm feeling a little bit anxious. And she'll say, it's okay. And that's all I need. I just need to tell somebody I just feel a little bit anxious. And just that reassurance that they're not going to judge me um, is amazing. And to have somebody else, another friend who, whenever I needed something with my newborn, my friend Katie was just there for me 100%. Mwah, mwah. Love you, Katie, and Avery Hart. You're a cute little baby girl. I would just cry and she would say, it's okay. You're going to be okay. It's okay. And that's all I needed. And my meds and my doctor. Anywho, I just wanted to give people hope that you can get that crazy, the level of crazy that I was. And when I say crazy, I don't mean to offend anybody. I just don't know what else to say. Like, you can get that, um, I don't know, you can get that emotional, whatever. And eventually you can come out of it. I mean, it's going to be tough, but I just want to give you hope that it can get better. And if you have to stay on medication forever, that's life. If you don't have to, great. I mean, I'm gonna try to get weaned all the way off it again, but if I have to stay on it, that's just how it is, and I'm not gonna be ashamed of it. And part of that was it was so hard for me to share this story with everybody because I feel like people will judge me or be like, you are crazy, and I might be, but I have people in my life that love me, despite the fact that I have terrible ombre hair right now. And I don't know, I just am who I am, and I had a rough time, and I'm glad that I had doctors and friends and nurses, and if you need somebody to talk to, you can always leave a comment below. I can message you. Talk to your doctor, talk to a counselor. I have um, gosh, other hair problems. I have other resources down below, or not down below, if you look at my page on YouTube, just to see if I can help you get through any of it. I watched YouTube videos. It will get better. It might take some time, but it will get better. I was once at that dark, dark hole that you are at right now, and I got better. So if I can get better, so can you. And now I just want to show you a couple little um, pictures of me getting better and better after my crazy ordeal. Um, a last note, one of the other things I did every day, and you don't have to be religious or whatever, but I prayed every day. Um, One of my favorite prayers was, trust in the Lord with all your heart, lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge him, and he will direct your path. Um, I would, on my walks, I would say, God, I know you're here. I know you're listening. I praise you on good times. I praise you on bad times, but please help me get to the good times. You got to do whatever you got to do. That was one of my saving graces. If you're not religious, that's okay too. Just know that it will get better. Reach out for help, and um, it it's gonna get better. It will get better. And here are some pictures of me on my way on the up. So I hope you enjoyed this video, and check out my other videos and subscribe if you want to hear more from me or whatever.